POA community, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Robert Linkul, trainingtheolderadult.com. We are here today on a deep dive to talk about the get up, also known as the Turkish get up, the American get up, all types of different names of variations of getting up and down off the floor, typically with weight. I wanted to look at the value of this lift. This number one was requested from one of our subscribers, one of our fans. As we end every video, we always like to open this up to people and say, what else would you like us to talk about or dive into? And so there was a request for the get up, and I thought that was a pretty interesting one. So we're going to dive into that. As the bodies age, the ability to get up and down off the floor, if it's not practiced on a regular basis, it will start to lose that ability. We are in that use it or lose it mentality after about age 50. So we want to look at the purposeful use of this lift, how we can train for it. We'll go through all the pieces and the steps using a bench and some other additional tools to help us get up and down off the floor and practice our ability to do so. But also, what is the actual exercise-based benefits of this lift? So this article here is 2014. It's a while ago. Jay Daw is one of my buddies as editors at the time, and you can see the authors up top, Leatherwood and Whitaker and Esco. And they basically found that you train using the get up as a multi-plane, multi-directional, full body strength developed lift, which basically means everything's being activated and everything's on, and it's difficult, and you're moving in the sagittal plane and the transverse plane and the frontal plane, and we're getting a split stance, and we're getting a reach, and we're getting oblique work, and we're getting extensor work, and we're getting all kinds of good work going on here, but it doesn't really fall into any specific category other than core or full body. So they looked at it as a useful component of that and found it to be, yeah, it's beneficial. It can train all these different things. There's a tactical component to it. There's floor-based value to it if you do jiu-jitsu or if you're a wrestler. That's good there. If you're an offensive lineman, if you're a shot putter, if there's any kind of power and or strength variation in which you are going to be, either getting up and down off the ground or utilizing the ground as something to push off of, more than just with your feet. So utilizing your hand contacts too and pushing from there. There's great value to be trained in this lift. Personally, I feel like there's a value to it, especially for the aging adult. Once they know how to perform it, it's great to practice that on a daily basis. And we try to get our clients in every single workout to get up and down off the floor at least twice, if not more. We'll even purposely program in floor press rather than bench press. Even though we have a perfectly good bench right here in house that they get to use, we still make them lay on the floor, do their sets and get back up 3-4 times, really for the focus of just getting up and down properly, but also, checking our box for a horizontal push. A couple other articles too. I just wanted to give you a few other ones that you could look into on this. 2019, a descriptive analysis of shoulder muscle activation during individual stages of the get up. So the authors here looked at how much stress and engagement you're putting on the shoulder when bracing on the floor to get up and down, and found it to be a pretty good amount. A lot of deltoid work is going on, not only on the, the arm reaching up overhead as the heavy deltoid stabilizer to hold that weight over your head, but the ground reaction arm that you're pushing down on. That in traction, that term I like to use, where all the muscles are pulling in to lock and secure that joint in there, are really getting some great work. So a little more information on that one. And then I think the best instructional instructional article that I found comes from my buddy Pete McCall. Pete does great work. He's got a couple of different textbooks out, one more recent on functional training, and he's just an all-around great coach, educator, and individual. So I wanted to reference his article. You'll be able to see a lot of it here on the ACE website. He gives a detailed, step-by-step different positions. We're going to go through all these, how to, work from that floor. If you need it written out, you've got that there. What are some of the key areas to target on? How often to do this, reps, sets, that kind of a thing. Talking about packing or intracting that shoulder on the floor. Some other techniques for practicing to perfect. Also some of the more common mistakes, how to fix those, and then his kind of final wrap up there of the importance of it. So with all that being said, I am going to open this up here, and tiny bit, you might notice the camera angle a little bit higher and different, because I did want you to get a different kind of a bird's eye view of this as we go through. So I'm gonna instruct this with my back to you for a good chunk of it. So if you're going to mirror and follow with me, I find it way easier to do this if we're all facing the same direction. So you're gonna be facing the screen, and then I would have to call everything opposite to you and all that. So I'm just gonna face away, right? So sorry for the butt shot, but I'm gonna face away, and then we'll go through the steps, and then we can kind of go piece by piece. I'll come back, face you, and then we can go from there. I also put a bench here, as this is a good indicator for clients too, of where this vertical and even 45 or 90 degree angle start positions are, but also if they need this to help them up and down, they can, okay? All right, so the whole thing is gonna look like so. I'm gonna drop my right foot behind me, go down to my right knee. I'm going to pivot my foot from what I'll call the right railroad track to the left railroad track. From there, I'm gonna put both of my hands down onto the floor, either my flat hands or my fists, okay? Either one works for me. This is a good practiced windmill position that we can go up and down from. From there, and again, you'll have the weight overhead. I'll show you, this is just purely how to get up and down off the floor. I'm going to pull my knee up and put my butt cheek right where my kneecap was. Put that down onto the floor. And then from here, I've taken my left hand up. I'm gonna go down to my elbow. So I'm kind of reclining like I'm watching TV, hey. And then I'm gonna go down to my shoulder, and then I'm gonna roll onto my back, and then I can bring my other leg up, and now I'm in my supine position on the floor. Now I'm gonna get back up at the exact same side, but the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tuck my right foot behind my left. So when I roll to my right side, I already have my right leg externally rotating, and my leg is tucked underneath. My right leg is tucked underneath my left one. I'm gonna try to roll, I'm already on my shoulder, I'm gonna try to roll onto my elbow, and that's gonna include using this left leg. Now, some people will turn it in, others wanna keep it up. When you start to use weight, ideally, you wanna keep that weight staying vertical, and so you're gonna push here because you want your knee and the weight to stay in the same position. But if they're just like, I just need to get off the ground, they can roll all the way to their side and then push with that momentum to get to here. That's fine, I don't care. They're gonna walk up to their hands, and then now we're just reverse engineering where we just were. My right butt cheek on the floor, I'm gonna push with my hands, pick my knee up, and put it in that same spot. If I drew a little circle where my butt cheek was there on the floor, that's the same spot I'm gonna put my kneecap. Now I'm in that windmill, okay? We already worked that position on the way down. I'm right back here to get up. I'm gonna pivot my foot back onto the railroad track, and then I can either put my hands on my knee or hands on the bench, or my hands can just stay here, and ideally, I push myself up to the standing position, and I'm back in my, my standing start. So that would be a pretty basic but efficient version of how to get down onto the ground and how to get back up, okay? We can do that again with me facing you so you can see some of the positions as we run through that. But eventually, you're gonna wanna stabilize a weight over your head as you do that, and taking certain pieces of the lift and practicing it with a weight is actually a really good way to do that. Now, I'm gonna use a fat bell when I'm doing this, and I think that a dumbbell or a fat bell is probably a little bit better way to go with your clients as opposed to the kettlebell. The kettlebell is quite difficult to hold in position for a lot of clients. And it's difficult to hold the weight on either side, and it can start to hurt their wrist, and it can start to just be more of a nuisance than anything. So in the very beginning, I think it's fine to just hold their arm up, or sometimes we'll have a client hold their shoe and stabilize that. But if it's not heavy at all, sometimes it's more difficult to learn to engage because you don't have anything to really push against or to try to stabilize there because you're just simply holding your arm there, right? So sometimes a little bit of weight actually of value. And where I find this to be the best positioning to practice is in that half kneeling windmill. So let's get you down on your right knee. And this start position is really important. My right knee, my right foot, they're on the same railroad track. My left knee, my left foot, they're on the left railroad track. I need to pivot my right foot over so it's on this left side. Now the reason that we do that is it opens this hip so I can hip hinge and put my hands down onto the floor a lot more efficiently than if my leg is straight. I'm actually impinging my hip a little bit to try to get down to the ground. So pivot your foot over. You can see it over here, right? Bring my foot over, and that's gonna open my right hip up, and now my hinge ability to be able to put both my hands onto the floor and then come back up is really efficient, and it's comfortable, and it's rather safe. Now, you notice I keep going to my knuckles. I have a wrist injury that putting my hands flat on the floor, it really bothers me. A lot of clients are either gonna have carpal tunnel, arthritis, they're gonna have issues that might be very similar. So I will switch between just putting my knuckles down, other times putting my hands down if we're gonna transition into the full get up, just whatever's most comfortable. This is also part of this lift that with the aging body, if their hands are really a big deterrent, then this lift is really uncomfortable to do and people just won't like doing it. So it's why it's like, and let's do 1 or 2 a day, and let me just make sure I'm checking that box that you can do this. But we don't need to do get-ups, every day, sets of 10, 3 times 3, end up doing 30 of these, we don't need to do that. This is just another ability level lift that I think is pretty good for us to practice. All right, we've pivoted the right foot. My left hand is gonna hold this weight, and ideally I'm gonna hold it vertical right over my shoulder. And I can still look forward, but what I like to tell my clients most often is to look up at the weight. Because if I look at the weight, even when I hinge or if I do anything else, instead of looking down and rounding down, if I keep looking up, even when I hinge, it helps keep my posture in a really good position while I'm hinging, okay? So the cueing that you'll see in the article from Pete says to go at about 45 degrees. I actually like 90 degrees. I prefer to open out to the side more. When we start to sweep the leg through, it gives you a little more space, but it's also a wider base. More flexibility training will be done if you put your hand in closer at 45, which will make the lift ultimately probably more effective. But in the beginning, if you want to start to drift out to the side over here, you don't have to go all the way over to 90, but you can get close to that, okay? You'll see me get pretty damn close to it. So I'm going to secure my weight overhead and vertical. I'm looking straight up. What if a client can't do this? What if they can't get their arm vertical? Can they just hold their weight on their chest and do the entire lift? Can they go from here and do the whole lift and get up and down and just hold a dumbbell on their chest? Absolutely. The most important thing is that they can get up and down off the ground. Most important. Again, we don't even have to use weight, but if you want to load it, this is fine. Even better is if they can secure this weight over their head, then let's go from there, okay? So I'm going to unlock my hip, push it out to the side, and now I'm in my half kneeling windmill. And in this position, I have to put all my weight down onto my right fist because I'm eventually going to move my leg through here in just a second, right? But I can practice and use this as a simple lift, these half kneeling unloaded windmills. Every time I come down, I'm unloading my body weight onto my arm and I'm pushing my hip away, trying to stretch these obliques, stretch my glute, and I'm trying to reach up all at the same time. This is one of my favorite mobilities to do in our prep, as it works so many of the like the lateral or quarter trunk musculatures, the erector going up the side of the spine, the QL, quadratus laborum, your lat, your glute, your hamstrings, your obliques, your intercostals. All these are getting some range of motion, stretching, and starting to loosen up. Especially if you have a lower back issue, especially if you have lower back tightness, this is one of the better lifts or mobilities to do. But eventually, if you load it, it is a lift. Now, in the act of doing that, if we don't put all of our weight down, like if I just touch my hand and return and touch my hand and return, I'm either doing this with body weight or with weight overhead. Basically, I'm exposing my back to injury by, I'm gonna guess, 3 to 5 fold, okay? Simply because I'm not putting all my weight down on my arm. Clients will want to hurry through these. They put their hand up, they put their hand up, and they just kind of flash through it. I don't want to flash through it. I want to encourage this lift to be slow and to completely unload and allow that back to open and reach and stretch and feel it. Because the more mobile we are in here, the more efficient we're going to be at moving our legs through underneath us. That's really the difficult part, okay? So with the load, I can practice my unload, return, my unload, return, okay? From there, I can get rid of my weight for a little bit, and I can either do one hand or two hands for practice, and I'm gonna go where my kneecap is. I'm just gonna lift it up and then put my butt cheek down right where that was. Either both hands or one hand, okay? Back to my knee, back to my butt. Back to my knee, back to my butt, okay? Practicing that back and forth every time, unloading, putting all my weight down on it is a very good way for us to practice that mobility and that shift. This may be a very difficult position for clients to do. Their transition of picking their leg up, their knee up, and moving it could be really difficult. They may even be dragging it across the floor. We haven't even brought it all the way through yet. Remember, the whole thing is gonna look like this, where we're gonna bring the leg all the way through and then return it in that little bit of like a breakdance move. In some cases, if the client can't get their leg through like that, just have them go down to their butt. And then once we get down to the floor, we'll be able to elongate that leg and then return back up from there. So let's do the most simple version of it, where both my hands go to the floor. I'm gonna pick up my right knee and put my right butt cheek on the ground, and now I'm here, okay? From here, either both hands or one, I go down to my elbow, down to my shoulder, onto my back, and then I can bring my leg out and straighten it, okay? Now I'm either going to pre-tuck this foot again, getting up if I know I struggle, or I can leave it out here in front of me, and then when I go to get up, I'm pushing with my left leg. I'm gonna roll to my right shoulder, up to my right elbow, and again, we'll simulate a weight here soon, okay? And then I'm gonna get up to my hand or hands if I'm without a weight, and now I'm gonna pull this leg all the way through, take my right knee and put it all the way back here where my or where my butt cheek was, right? So I've pulled that all the way through. Now I'm back to my half kneeling windmill, which we've already practiced. So if I can do that without load, then eventually we can practice just holding the weight at our heart, where I can hinge over or put my hand down, take my leg and either go all the way through or just go down to my butt, go down to my elbow, down to my shoulder, flat on my back. Now let's reverse it. Push on your left heel, get up to your elbow, get back up to your hand. Here's my high bridge. I got to get up, pull my leg all the way through, windmill, and then I can straighten my leg and then stand, or we can just go right back to practicing this windmill again. Once I feel pretty confident holding the weight at my heart, then we can try the whole thing with the weight overhead. And again, I want to keep looking at it the whole time. I'm going to hinge over and unload, put all my weight down. I'm going to pull that leg through, either all the way to my butt or just down to my cheek like we talked about earlier, looking up at the weight, down to my elbow, down to my shoulder, down to my other shoulder. I'm still looking at it, okay? As soon as I start to look this way, where does the weight go? It starts going that way. But if I keep looking up, it'll stay vertical. So I'm gonna look up to my shoulder and my elbow, push up to my hand, high bridge, hip, 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 pull. Oh man, that's a hard stretch. But I got into that windmill position that we were practicing, swinging this leg all the way through. There's my windmill to get myself back up. I'm still looking up all the way back to the standing position. And then we're ready to repeat, okay? These get-ups, these practices, we want to make them autonomic to the point where we say to the client, everybody get down to the ground. They can drop a foot behind them, put both their hands on the floor, pull their leg through. Now we're down or we're laying down. And then when they go to get up, same thing. I can get both my hands here and then get to at least one knee, right? If not both knees. And then windmill or push themselves back up. This, in my opinion, is just learning techniques on the floor and getting the capability and the strength to do it. The difficult part is right here. It's the bite of both legs to engage at the same time and push the body up. What most people will do in the very beginning is they struggle here, and so they'll lean forward heavy on this front leg and try to straighten their back leg and then just use their back to pull themselves up. Now, did you successfully get up off the ground? Yes. But did we kind of manipulate the system and really expose your back? Yeah. Ideally, we would keep a little closer to 50-50. If anything, I could put both my hands on my thigh and try to push with my arms to get both of my legs extended. And even though I'm still hunched forward, it's a lot less back activity than that full forward engagement. So I'm okay being here on my knee, both hands on my thighs, pushing my chest up. Both legs were pretty 50-50, and then I can bring my legs halfway, or however I want to progress it from there. So this gives you a little bit more in depth. Let's talk about a couple of the drills that we can do here to get a little more efficient with this on the floor. In looking at some of the suggested techniques from Pete and some of the common mistakes, that's where we will develop some of these drills from to really help us. So let's look at the most common mistakes here first before we get to our drills. Rushing through the exercise without taking time to learn each individual component, that's big. If some people aren't ready to do it all in day one, that's all right. Just break it up into pieces and let them learn. Not being able to maintain an extended arm throughout the entire movement. Like we talked about, you can come in and work from your chest, and it could even be fully extended on every other step, okay? So I'm fully extended overhead. I go down to my knee, I pivot, I windmill, and now from here, the hardest part for me is to sweep my leg with the weight over my head. So maybe I bring the weight down to my chest, I do my sweep, then I re-secure the weight over my head and go to my elbow and go to my shoulder and work my way all the way back to here. And then I go, man, I just can't stabilize it here and sweep my leg at the same time. So I'm gonna bring it back to my chest. I'm gonna sweep and pull my leg through. And then from here, my side windmill, I can push my 2.5 or 5 pound dumbbell back into position, windmill up, and then practice back to standing. So even if we have to modify one step, but do all the rest of them right, I think you're winning, okay? What else? Allowing the weight to pull the wrist into an extended position or into positions that are not perfectly vertical. So that's another one. Trying to move from the bridge directly to the standing position. That means when you do your high bridge and you pull your leg behind, people will try to throw that leg all the way back and just go right into the lunge. And we see that one, it's very hurried and it's super awkward, and you're basically trying to do the splits with the weight over your head. Got to go to the knee, take a moment, secure it, and then return. The lack of hip mobility, that's a big one. And that, I feel like, is probably the hardest. I mean, you can even see me, I'm not great with my hip mobility, but since my hip replacements, they're way better. It's way better than it used to be, but I have to practice this drill often. I have to be able to put both my hands down, go to my butt, go back to my knee, go to my butt, go back to my knee. And as I do this and I progress, I start working my arm higher with each one of these. So I start to practice that arm being in position, right? So when I'm ready to practice it for real, I know what this progression feels like. And that's just going to my butt. That's not even taking the leg all the way through, which a lot of people, they can't get their leg, they hook it on their other foot, or they get stuck and they're dragging their foot across the floor. It doesn't mean that you're too weak to do it. Your musculature is so tight, you can't get your knee into your chest enough to sweep it through underneath you. And that's where practicing with both hands can be valuable. Both hands on the floor so you can support your body weight while you pull your foot through. And then as I go to come back, drag that foot through and get back to both hands here as best I can. It's a challenge. It's not easy. And because of the hand and wrist and shoulder activity pushing on the floor, as you saw in those previous articles, how much use of your upper body is being activated, how much glenohumeral pressure and activation of musculatures around the shoulder is not only on to stabilize the joint, but embracing your body weight and moving it through a manipulated position. It's quite challenging, okay? These are very difficult lifts and mobilities and ranges that, to the purist, has to be done perfectly. But if you've just fallen down on the ground, just get up any way that you can. But if we're going to practice this in the most efficient and most effective ways that we can. Obviously, we want to get as close to this as we're capable, and then adding load to it will get us extra strong. So when the situation, hopefully it doesn't occur where you fall down and you have to get up, but if that situation does occur, you're more than confident and more than capable of getting up and down off the floor, okay? So there's your common mistakes that can get in the way and ways to kind of work on improving them. Some of the tips: start the exercise. We hit pretty much all these as we went through. In learning, the key takeaway I will say is learning each piece individually and keeping your eyes in the direction of where you want the weight to be, I think are the two most successful or the most key pointed tips that we could give. If you're continuing to practice each individual piece, especially the ones you struggle on the most, okay? And then in doing so, you are practicing your eyesight to secure the weight wherever you want it to be. I think that's going to help you be really successful. If you're looking down, looking away, looking at your feet while you're doing this, the arm is going to continue to drift. It's done autonomically almost, because your body just wants to go where you are placing your attention. Almost any time we're looking this way, everything else in our body wants to start to turn and focus, because that's where you're emphasizing your focus at. It's hard to leave your arm up here and go, well, what are my feet doing? And not have it go, it's no longer perfectly vertical where I wanted it. That is the intention, and why, if you keep looking at it and securing it, number one, it should stay in the right spot. Number two, you should be in the best posture that you can be while performing that mobility, right? That range of motion and that efficiency, I would say, of going through the movement pattern, all right? Okay, so a couple of drills that we can practice with this one as well is from the floor, holding the weight, okay? We can hold our weight overhead, and knowing that I'm gonna get up onto my right side, I can practice putting my right leg out and simply just do the roll. Roll to my shoulder, roll back down. Roll to my shoulder, roll back down. This is teaching ground reaction, pushing on that left heel, and my right shoulder blade are my two contact points. And those are kind of leveraging against each other to help me push and reach this towards the ceiling. So that's your initial start right there. Heel left, push down. Right shoulder blade push down as I reach up. That gets me initiated off the floor. Now the momentum from that will take me over my shoulder blade and onto my elbow, and then I can go back to my shoulder, back to my other shoulder, okay? Push the heel, drive the shoulder blade, and let's go all the way over it. Over the shoulder blade, up to my elbow, and then back to my shoulder blade, back to my other shoulder. Now we're going to carry that momentum even further. Again, these are all individual drills you can practice. We're going to do the shoulder blade to the elbow, all the way up to the hand. Shoulder blade, elbow, hand. I'm still looking up, notice that. And I kept my left knee vertical, pushing my heel down, and I'm pushing now some ground contact with my right foot a little bit. Back to my elbow, back to my shoulder blade, back to my other shoulder blade. Now, let's go shoulder blade, elbow, hand, high bridge, and all while keeping this weight right where we want it. Shoulder blade, elbow, hand, high bridge. That's where I'm pushing with the right foot. I'm using my ground reaction there, my left heel ground reaction there, my right shoulder. Oh, it's really got to lift me up there to secure that high spot to make sure I don't buckle this guy. And then I can practice again, back to my butt, back to my shoulder, back to my other shoulder, okay? All of those drills can be practiced either individually or progressively like we just did, with or without weight. Now that hard part is from that high bridge, how you pull the weight, your leg back under you while securing the weight. So let's pretend that we're holding our weight and we're gonna roll, reach, push, high bridge, pull the leg underneath, and then bring it back forward, and then pull it back underneath, and then bring it back forward. And that can be a drill all on its own. You notice when I'm doing that, how widespread we are. That big wide base is pretty common in the beginning. As we get more capable, more flexible, more comfortable with this whole thing, we can start to tighten it up and make this whole process a little bit more efficient. Now, this whole time, I've been demoing on one side. We would need to do all of these drills and practice all this on the other side as well. And with a lot of people, we are going to see that they are not as coordinated, not as comfortable, not as capable from one side to the other. So you might crush it with your left arm up and your right hand on the floor. And then when you go to the other side, you can't keep your arm vertical. You can't get your leg underneath you. It skips along, but my left shoulder feels way stronger holding me here. It just depends from side to side on your body. But the more we practice on both, the more equal we should start to get, where you're capable of getting up and down on both sides, probably with one of them being a lot more comfortable, or at least moderately more comfortable than the other. And then eventually adding weight to both of those, and then eventually feeling really proficient at getting up and down off the floor on both sides with or without weight. Then we can kind of check that box and just say, we're okay. Is this a lift that we need to train with weight all the time, every week, that kind of a thing? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. But do I want to practice getting up and down with the proper techniques on a daily basis? Yes. I think that's pretty important. And that's where, with every training session we do, our clients get up and down off the floor at least twice. Sometimes it's more like 10 or 15 times. Just depends on what we're doing. But I try to incorporate that in on the regular. So at least 2 to 3 days a week, they're getting up and down off the floor a couple of times. You might go out into the world and find 1,000 people over the age of 50 and say, when was the last time you were on the floor? And they may not even remember. I can remember it was this morning. I mean, I'm on the ground every single day. Literally every single day I get on the ground. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't lay down on the floor at some point. But that's a skill and something that I'm practicing so I can keep it throughout my entire life, lifespan. If I stop doing that at some point, I'm going to lose the ability to do that. Now, can I do it with the heavy weight that I used to? No, I used to be able to do a 100-pound get-up, and then I stopped doing it with that heavy load and just kind of practiced the get-up for a while with just body weight, and then a couple of injuries, this and that, and I got back, I could do it with a 70-pounder, then I could do it with a 50-pounder, and now I can do it with like a 40-pounder, and I'm happy. That's a decent strength level and strength ability for me, and I'm okay with that. But what's most important, I can get up and down off the floor efficiently, safely, comfortably on both sides of my body. And that's where I want to establish good practices for all of you, your clients, your people you're working with at home, in the gym, in your studios, etc. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope this deep dive gave you some good instruction on how to perform it. I'll give you one more look here at Pete's article. If you head over to ACE, American Council on Education. Did I put their link on there? I did not. But head over to their website. You can either put in Pete's name or just put in, Turkish Get Up at the top, and that will pop up right away. Pete's all over their website. Again, excellent coach, great author, great mentor, very good friend. He's a really good dude and has a great podcast as well, so you can check him out. Any other comments, questions, you let me know. If not, continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.